So welcome everyone. This is a conversation we're having about Prison Outreach Network. And I'm just going to ask everyone just to briefly introduce themselves. So Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, Sean. Thanks very much. Well, my name is Ryan. I've been with Prison Outreach Network now since about 2005, initially to support the admin coordinating function of the group, training and helping with visiting prisons and performing and helping coordinate concerts in a range of prisons, including when we used to go to the Isle of Wight and in other locations as well. Prison Outreach Network is a very welcoming, friendly group of people. So that's a summary of me.
Fantastic. And Emmanuel, you've been involved a long time.
Yes, I've been involved in Prison Outreach Network since 1989, and I'm still involved in it in the role of leadership. And it has been a wonderful experience being part of the team. The team is made up of different believers from different churches, and we go together to prison. We have a rota that we follow. And prayer and team building has been the core part of the team, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Emmanuel. And Pete, just introduce yourself. You're not directly involved, but you have mental health expertise and have visited folk in prisons. We thought it would be helpful to have you involved in the conversation as well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm a counsellor. I'm accredited member of BACP and the Association of Christian Counsellors. And yeah, I guess my specialist area is bereavement and loss. And we have, as a family, supported somebody who had a very long prison sentence and visited them over a long period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So Ryan and Emmanuel, perhaps you can say a bit about Prison Outreach Network pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, what it looked like, and then maybe we could talk about how that's changed in lockdown with the pandemic and so on.
Sure. Maybe if I could just go first and just to give a bit about Prison Outreach Network and kind of before the current pandemic, then I'll ask Emmanuel to come in and talk about where we are now and where we're heading towards. So as Emmanuel said, I mean, Prison Outreach Network has been going a fairly long time. Initially back in 1986, it was set up by a group of Christians who really had a passion and a desire to use their gifts and all the talents that they had just to proclaim their faith in prisons in Great Britain. It's really an interchurch ministry of lots of people. There's over 100 active people and collectively 300 plus on our Facebook page as well. So there are a lot of people. We cover, as I said, Great Britain as well as Northern Ireland, and we're from I would say a diverse background, diverse professional background, ethnic background as well. We have members on the team who are also ex-offenders, and their ministry and their testimonies are really invaluable when we go into prisons, because it also gives a hope to the people that are in there as well. We bring in people who are artists, musicians, songwriters and the like, and they are able to help in the act of worship and, in what we do within prisons. So we effectively are, like I say, a family ministry, welcoming individuals from all churches, but who have the sole vision really of proclaiming the gospel. There is a minimum age requirement to go into prisons, which is 18 years of age in the UK. So you can't go into prisons if you're younger than 18, at least with us as a team. We are very fortunate as a ministry as well to have a lot of people who have a good drive, lots of energy and enthusiasm, and are really committed to what we do. And some of these are retired members who surround the ministry in prayer, and that is invaluable to the group as well. So what is our mission? I would say our mission is to see the incarcerated men, women, and the young people, young men as well as their families and the local communities, transformed by the life-changing message of Jesus. Really, there's an excerpt in Acts chapter 26, which says it's to open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness and release from their sins and an inheritance among those who have been sanctified, that is, set apart and made holy by faith in Christ Jesus. So, although challenging, the ability to forgive should never be underestimated. And we might be able to talk about that a bit further as we go on. The purpose of Prison Outreach Network really is to, as I said, deliver the Christian gospel message to people in prisons, including immigration removal centers as well. So there's an extract again in John 3:16 to 17, which says, "For God so greatly loved the world, and he dearly prized the world, that he gave his one and only begotten Son, so that whoever believes and trusts him as the Savior shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to judge and to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him." So how did Prison Outreach Network operate pre-COVID-19 pandemic? Well, we effectively led the church service on behalf of the prison chaplain. So that included delivering teaching, a short focused message. We also met on some weekdays and delivered Bible studies and prayer studies. Emmanuel has been instrumental in leading courses within prison, such as anger management and self-control, self-conduct courses and workshops. We've also had some various artists who are part of the ministry, musical artists and talents, leading vocal workshops to help with things like self-esteem, which is very important. And we've encouraged people who are leaving prison to be part of informal fellowship groups. So one group, for example, was Transformed, that met in a couple of places in England. So in addition to leading the service, and I'll come on to what that means in a second, we've also delivered things like training in how people should conduct themselves when they go into a prison. Because whilst it is going into a building, it's not a conventional church service in the sense of going into at least what was a traditional church service pre-pandemic. So typically a visit used to last anything from 5 or 6 hours, and that sounds like a long time, but when you look at what was involved in that, that included time to prepare to travel there, to deliver the service, to debrief before and after the service as well. But the actual service was never more than 1 hour in total, and that is from the time people arrived until the time they left. If they arrived late, you will always finish on time. And one thing I have learned with Prison Outreach Network is the ability to be flexible, adaptable, and accommodating, because sometimes you may prepare something, you get there, and actually that's not what's going to happen on that day. Okay, a lot of things could change. So as an example of places we've visited, we've traveled across from Dover to Essex to Kent, Dorset, and of course London and Thames Valley. And again, before the pandemic, we were visiting on average maybe 3 to 5 prisons per Sunday per week, every week of the year. And that included Christmas, Easter, New Year. There was no time where we said, no, we will not come. I think the only time would be lack of people perhaps, but there was always at least 50 people on active duty on a Sunday, possibly a little bit more as well. So we were generally well supported. And for that, I think I've got to thank the members of Prison Outreach Network and all their families and their support, because without the family's support, it's very impossible, it's very difficult to do this. You're not able to arrive somewhere at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning because it takes time to pass through security. And then you're not back with your family until the afternoon, by the time you've finished the service, cleared security and traveled back home. So that's how we generally were pre-COVID-19, and a snippet, I guess, of what we did. So hopefully that has helped to see where we were. And I'd just like Emmanuel to touch on where we are now, please.
Mm-hmm. After COVID, or during COVID, volunteers are not allowed to come to the prison, which is for obvious reasons. So what we've been able to do is to write almost like a semi-newsletter format with message for Bible study during the week and sermon on Sundays. And that is being given out to the boys, distributed to them on the wing. And but that is not in all prisons. It's not in all prisons. In Belmarsh, we've been allowed to do that. Beams and Eve, they develop a like semi newsletter format with tips, encouraging information, inspiration, sometimes like a poem, sometimes like, you know, word of encouragement. And the chaplain, we send it to them by email, and the chaplain print it up and distribute it to the guys on the wing. For my role as a chaplain, I do the same thing on a weekly basis for the past 6 months, and just prepare a Bible study format, 1 page, and the other page is sermon, but short and sharp, not too boring, and it's distributed to the guys on the wing. And we've been privileged also to have 2 volunteers from PON who've been able to support during this COVID time, who are able to go. Well, they're not just volunteers now, they're now what I call volunteer chaplains. They've been endorsed by the headquarters. So, and they are able now to support me in the role that I'm doing as a chaplain, because I've been shielding, so I've not been able to go on the wing. So they've been my legs and my eyes and my arms. And so that's one of the things we've been doing. And during this COVID time, no Sunday service has been happening. So, and I don't see the possibility of Sunday service happening until next year. And so that means the volunteers, now we're now strategically planning on how we're going to be sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with the guys in the prison, in all the prison that we go to. Well, I can mention one of the prisons that we go to is Wandsworth, and they've been asking us to do pre-recording materials whereby they can use on the wings for the guys to listen to. So we're in the process of doing that. So yeah. That is COVID.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. I mean, that's very clear, both of you. I think just the breadth of what you were doing beforehand, the number of people involved, bringing the gospel, but also psychological wisdom, managing anger, all of those things, which is really important. And then how COVID has impacted your ability to get in. Have you picked up how COVID has impacted the prison population? Are you aware of, you know, is there a lot more stress, a lot more mental ill health? Do you know?
Well, I cannot speak for any prison, but I can give a general overview. A general overview, which is guys are locked down in cell for about 22 hours because of the COVID. And funny enough, there's been a lot of, the guys have been able to cope with that. The level of violence has dropped dramatically. Of course, we can say because they're not outside the cell, but they do go out for exercise, they do go out for shower, they do go out for food within the 1 hour. So anything could have happened within those 1 hour. But funny enough, it has really dropped across the whole prison. And thank God for that.
Yeah.
And I think it's not easy on them to be locked up for a long time, but they are definitely preoccupying themselves with things to do. And I think the officers, I can't speak for anybody, I think the prison service has been doing a wonderful job in looking after them.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Emmanuel. And Pete, can you share anything, obviously, from your personal experience about what prisoners might go through? Obviously, you had a long-term relationship visiting someone in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just making notes as you were all speaking, and I remembered back to that trauma of, you know, the trial and watching somebody go into prison, and it's literally traumatizing. Well, and it is for the whole family. So that was one point. And I wondered about, from a mental health perspective, some very practical help around tips around how do you regulate your emotions, those grounding techniques that Sean will know really well, mindfulness. I don't need to talk about that. And then I just thought, for people who perhaps are wanting to get involved, these people are experiencing loss, aren't they? This is a bereavement, because bereavement means to be robbed of something or somebody. So these people are losing obviously their freedom, but their identity. You know, not everyone in prison is has been doing drugs since the age of 15. You've got your bank managers, you've got all sorts of backgrounds, and suddenly they're not that person. Obviously, they need to know who they are in Christ. And I guess if you've lost everything, perhaps you lost all your security. So I'm speaking to you know all of this, Emmanuel and Ryan, but that's what struck me really. And then around funerals, and yeah, I hadn't thought about now not being able to attend, but just like I've just been doing a webinar this afternoon, things that if you can't attend, things that can happen. So one thing I thought of, where there's a floral tribute, is it possible to pick a flower off the floral tribute and for someone to be able to press the flower and have a dried flower? That was a very simple thing, but I don't want to talk too much, but routine, that was the last thing. Giving hope, routine. How do you read the Bible? Just practical tips or tools, lecto divina, things like that. How do you actually read a Bible passage?
That's really helpful, Pete. I think what I hadn't thought about was about the impact on families who obviously outside. What's happening with families visiting and stuff like that? Are you aware of that, Emmanuel and Ryan?
Family visits is now most family visits is on Zoom now, and yes, it's totally different from physical contact. Totally different from physical contact, and like Pete said, all this has emotional impact on the guy. The parents, the men will not be able to carry their children. It's all this.
Yeah.
It add up, isn't it? They all add up, and but this is where we are. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
So
there's an issue around hope as well, isn't there, Emmanuel, and self-forgiveness. So I just want to touch on those 2 points really. So one issue is around whether or not all hope is lost going into prison. Okay, whether or not all hope is lost or not. And the second issue is around the ability to forgive yourself for whatever you may or may not have done, and for the ability to accept the forgiveness of someone else, and about letting go of certain things beyond your control. And when you feel you have no control, maybe hope is lost at that point. But I think where we are now, it's almost as if problems are being built up and stacked up for a future date.
Yeah, I think that's very profound and helpful. And is there ways people listening to this can help? And are there particular things you'd like to sort of request for prayer? And what we can do is we can have some slides that follow the interview, so people can pick up on the prayer requests and opportunities and contact details and things like that. So yeah, any prayer, any help that people can give.
Well, I'll let Emmanuel touch on the prayer requests. If I can just highlight one particular point. I think I mentioned before pandemic, we used to go into prisons. We used to go and do all these things physically ourselves. Of course, now we're in the pandemic world and we can't go and do that. However, where one door is sort of closed, another bigger door appears to have opened, whereby we now have the opportunity, really, as a collective church across, regardless of borders and boundaries now, to actually share our testimony, to share our faith. And I mentioned before about ex-offenders who are part of the team and part of the group, who are able to share their testimony and their faith to say, what changed them? Why are they changed? Why are they now different? What hope do they have? So if you want to share your testimony, albeit very briefly, a story, maybe you've written a piece of poetry, maybe you've written a song, it could be anything short as a few lines to something a bit longer. If you want someone to put music to it, you can work together with different people. Really, it's about using the skills and talents that you have. And I think what I've personally found during the last 6-7 months, there is a lot more people within the church community, and I don't just mean from one particular church, I mean across all churches, who have a raft of different skills and abilities. People who can speak, who can sing, who can do poetry, who can play music. And really, it's about all of us maybe participating and doing a small bit, but collectively, that small bit sums to something much bigger than we all are. And using that in a positive light to bring hope for people that are in prison, for their families, to say it's not all over. There is a hope and there is a future.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Emmanuel, just on any prayer requests.
I think is giving the prayer for families on the outside to be able to cope, not seeing their son, not seeing their husband or father, not be able to see them physically, just giving them that emotional strength to be able to cope with that. And also the emotional strength for the guys who are behind the bars, not to fall into a sense of the word I'm like to is that I've experienced, suspicion, that's like what Ryan said, when things are out of your control, so they are not now becoming extremely frustrated. So God to put hand on their emotions, so they are not overreading into things that is happening outside and it's not happening. You know, which has to do with the issue of trust.
Emmanuel, I was wondering about that sense of everything's out of control. Perhaps it's something around, in my very small world, what do I actually have control over, and how can I do that well? What do I have control? I have some control over about what I spend my free time doing or not doing. Keeping my body fit as well as I can, things like that.
Yeah, because sometimes when I tell guys, I said, yes, you are here, but you have to learn to trust God to look after your family for you. I said, because sometimes I go to, I said, what if you are dead? Who's going to look after your family? You know? And I use myself. I said, you know, my parents died when I was very young, but here I am. I'm still alive. God look after me. So, but you still have your family. Trust God to look after them for you.
And I was thinking, Sean, about the creative opportunities with being able to record things. It's just, there's people who might be listening who are artistic, you know, showing someone, you know, I've always wanted to be able to paint a flower. Well, this is how you paint a flower. Oh, I can follow that. I can have a go at that. Simple outdoor stuff where you can't go outdoors. Actually, someone doing a video from outdoors perhaps might be nice for people to see. I know my friend, I can see the grass, I can see the trees, I haven't seen the tree. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, and I think the online stuff and the ability to do pre-recording, if they're letting you do that, does give you a huge opportunity. So maybe folk can contribute with that. So that is. I just want to say thank you to you, Ryan and Emmanuel, for being part of this amazing ministry, and I will be praying for you. Any sort of final words before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think I just want to add one thing really, which is that don't assume that everyone in prison is guilty. Don't assume everyone is innocent. Assume they are people, and everyone is different. We have people that are in prison that are young, all the way through to very old, and it doesn't matter if they're men or women. We have them in our prison system. So just bear that in mind. At any one point in time, anything can happen to anybody, and you don't know where life will take you. Yeah. And especially where we are now with the pandemic and people becoming stressed and anxious and anxiety is elevated, just bearing in mind that certain situations arise and people do things that they wouldn't normally do. Mm-hmm. So we do need prayer, prayerful intervention.
Yeah. For me, I would say whatever skill you have, don't think they are not ministerial in their outlook. If you have filming skills, if you have writing skills, whatever skills you have, they are God-given, and they can be used to promote God's kingdom in a varieties of ways. And these are the opportunities. The opportunities ahead of you to use your skills to benefit people, not just in your own church, but across the world and in prison.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's a challenge to all of us, I think, an opportunity to get out of our own little bubbles and think of others, you know, to love our neighbor who is also the person who's in prison. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for time, and Pete, thank you for coming along and sharing with that. Sure. And we'll hope that this recording really helps people understand a bit about Prison Outreach Network. All right.
Thanks very much.